In this tutorial, we're going to continue our work on dialogue, and we're going to actually extend the dialogue box that we made in the last tutorial. And we're actually going to make some branching dialogue, so dialogue where you're able to choose some different options. This tutorial will be a little bit heavy on the code, so we need to introduce some concepts in the code. So let's do that before we get started. The first idea is dictionaries. We have seen dictionaries before when we did the scene managers, but just to review, it's like a traditional dictionary in that there are words and definitions. In our case, we call them key and value, and they will look something like this, where there's the name of the dictionary, and then there's the curly brackets, which indicates dictionary. And then you have key and value pairings. So you'll have like a key one. This is like the word that you're looking up. And then you have the colon, and then you have the value one, which would be like the definition. It doesn't have to be key one and value one. You can have any words in here. The key has to be a string or a number, but the value can be anything. It could be a string, could be a number, it could be another dictionary, it could be a list. And then you have a comma, and then you have the next one. So this is how dictionaries work. And then when you want to find the value of something, like when you want to quote unquote look up a word, you'll just go and do something like this, where you say the name of the dictionary, which in this case is dictionary, and then you have the square brackets, and then inside the square brackets you put the key or the word that you're trying to look up, in this case key one, and then GD script will return the definition, in this case value one. So that's how the dictionaries work. Next is lists. I don't think we've talked about lists before. They're a little bit more simpler than dictionaries. Basically, it's a list of items, pretty self-explanatory. So this would be the name of the list, and then the square brackets with things inside that are set apart by commas. So this would be how a list is usually formatted. Inside the list can be anything. In this case, I have strings, but you can have a list of numbers, you can have lists of strings, you can have lists of other lists, you can have lists of dictionaries. All of those are fine. If we want to get something from the list, we use something called the index. Okay, and that's going to be a number. And so, for example, if we have the name of the list, which in this case is list, and then square bracket, and then a number like 0, that would be the first item in the list. So 0 would be the index of the list. So for whatever reason in GD script, or most coding languages, actually you start counting from 0. And so this is the 0 index, this is the 1 index, and this is the 2 index. And you can see, so list square bracket 1 would give us item 2, which is that one. So that's lists. Another concept that we will be using is the for loop. So if you need to have some code that needs to happen multiple times, we would typically use a loop. For loop is a very common way to do it. So how many times does the code actually run? Well, that depends on what you're looping. And so this is a typical structure, and this is similar to what we'll be using. So we have our list, item 1, item 2, and item 3. So that's the same as what we just talked about, a list. And here's our loop right here. Okay, so the name of the loop is a for loop, so that anytime you see the word for, we're starting a loop. The last thing in this line is the word list, which refers to this list right here. And this could be anything. This could be a dictionary, it could be a list, it could be whatever. And so the idea is that when computer sees, we're looking at lists, computer is going to say, okay, I'm going to look for this thing, which has 3 items in it. And so that's how many times I'm going to loop. And then this item, technically you're creating a new variable to hold each thing in the list. It doesn't have to be called item. It could be called, say, X. And then I would, instead of printing item, print X. So yeah, that's basically it. So when we say for X in list, this code is happening several times. We make the first time it happens, X is item 1. And so when we print X, we're actually printing item 1. So the computer is going to print item 1. That's the first time through the for loop. The second time through the for loop, X is now the next thing in the list, item 2. And when we say print X, we are printing item 2. Everything that's indented under the for is part of the for loop. So if I have more things in here, can I say print I and print by? So this all happens as part of the loop. So if I had something like this, it would print X first. So it would print item 1, and then it would print high, and then it would print by, and then it would go back to the, okay, so it says, okay, there's no more indented things, that, so I'm going back to the beginning of the list and starting it all over again with a new X. This time it's item 2. And so the next thing would be item 2, and then high, and then by, and so on. Item 3, high, by. So that's how for loops work. Okay, now that we know all that, we can talk about how we're going to structure the choices in our branching dialogue. So it's going to start with a dictionary. So all our dialogue is going to be stored in one giant dictionary. And the giant dictionary is going to have each value, each key and value pair is going to be a prompt and a dialog box, but that dialog box is going to be another dictionary. Okay, so in each dialog box is a dictionary with 2 entries, text and choices. And so each dialog box, so each one of these is going to have this and this. Okay, so the text is going to be some question that they asked, and the choice is going to be a list of choices. And then, to make things even more complicated, each list is another dictionary. So we have dictionaries inside a dictionary, but inside that dictionary we have lists, and inside that list we have more dictionaries. I know, super confusing, but when we look at the example of what we're doing, hopefully it will make a bit more sense. Inside each dictionary of choices, there's 2 things, text and next. Okay, and text is the thing that's displayed on the screen, and next is what the next dialog box is going to be. Let's look at what actually it's going to look like. So this is our full dictionary that we're going to have. So we have 3 entries in our dictionaries. This is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one. In each dictionary, we're going to have text and choices. This one also has text and choices. This one also has text and choices. And then inside choices is this list. You see the square brackets here that denotes that it is a list. The list has 2 dictionaries in it. That means I have 2 choices. And the first one is burgers and the second one is salad. If I choose burgers, then the next dialogue that I'm going to have is burger dictionary, which is actually right down there. And if I choose salad, the next thing that I'm going to have is salad dictionary, which is of course right there. The choices for salad dictionary and burger dictionary is just a list, we can tell, because there are the square brackets, but there's nothing inside. That means there's no choices here, and there's no choices here. So that's going to finish off my branching dialogue because there's no further choices, so it's done. So that's it. So just be careful when you're typing all this stuff in. We've structured it like this in many different lines so that it's easier to see the structure of it. You could do it all in one line, but it would be super confusing. But do make sure that you have all of the right symbols and punctuations, otherwise it's not going to work. All right, with that very long preamble out of the way, we can get started. We're just going to continue on our last tutorial, T19. So we'll grab a copy of that and we'll call it T20. Branching Dialogue, and we'll open that up. In our panel, we're going to add a new child, and that child is going to be a VBox container. We've used those before. Basically, it just puts everything, organizes everything in rows for us. Now we'll go to our level GD, and we're going to add in the variables, we're going to add that dictionary. So I'm just going to copy all this. You could pause it here and type everything out. I just turned off the spell check so that there's not those red underlines, so you can clearly see the underscores in some of these words. Again, pause it here if you need to have time to type everything out. I'm just going to copy it into my level.gd. And so it's all here now. All right. So yours should look something like that. We're going to add a new function to our level.gd. And it will be called show dialog, and this has one argument. We'll call it node name, and we're going to define that node equals dialog square brackets, and in the square brackets we're going node name. So don't forget, dialog is a dictionary. Square brackets is how we get the values of things in the dictionary. And so, for example, if I say dialog node name, so node name might be, say, start. If I say dialog square bracket start, that's going to give me all that stuff. Next, we're going to get our label from our node tree, and we'll put it there, and we'll say equals, oh no, we just have to say dot text equals, and we'll say node square bracket text. So what is node text? Well, we go back up to our dictionary, and here is the key, which is text, and here is the definition. So this is what's going to print out, or this is what's going to go into the text field of my label. And so that's going to display. Next, we're going to create our choices. And so before we create our choices, we need to actually clear what was in there from the last time that we used this thing. It's giving an error because we haven't created this function yet. We'll do that later. So we're going to now do our for loop. So it's going to look like this for choice and node choices. So node choices, what is that? Well, we go back to our dictionary and we see choices. So that's the key. And so what is the definition of choices? It's this list. We can see the square brackets at the top and bottom. It's this list of two dictionaries. So this is the two choices that's going to appear, burgers and salad. So this for loop is going to execute 2 times. once for burger and once for salad. All right, so let's make a button for our button equals button.new. So this is creating a new button. Usually we're doing the new buttons and stuff in the scene tree and it's a child of the panel or something like that. But in this case, we're creating them dynamically. So we're doing it on the fly. So we can't do it in the scene tree. We have to do it in the code. We'll give the button some text, and that's going to be choice text. And so, of course, choice text. So choice is the dictionary, and text. Sorry, choice is the dictionary, which is this, which is either burgers or salad, if you remember, and then text. So text is either burgers or this text is salad. So, depending on where we are in the for loop, one of these two things is going to display. Then we're going to go button.pressed.connect. Okay, and then we're going to go func. Selected, choice, square bracket, next. Let me just move this so that everything is visible on our screen. There we go. So what this is doing is, when we press the button, or when they detect that the button has been pressed, we're going to call this function right here. The function is called selected. We haven't made it yet. We will in a minute. And that has one argument, which is choice next, which if we go up and see, choice next is right here, next or next, and the definition is either burger dictionary, which is actually this, or salad dictionary, which is actually this. We have one last thing to do here, which is to add this button into the VBox container. And so the VBox container, of course, is helping us organize these things to make them in, rows. So let's grab the VBox container, and then we'll just say .add child. And what is the child that we're adding? Well, it's this button that we've created, just like that. So that's done for the show dialog. Now there's a couple of functions that we need to make, cleared choice and selected. Let's go ahead and make some new functions to do that. All right, so clear choices. So the first thing that we need to do is make a for loop, because the idea is that the purpose of this function is that every time we run this thing, we're filling up our VBox container with the choices that, are for that. But the next time we do it, we have to kind of clear out that VBox container. So we'll go for child in, and then we'll get that VBox container. So for each child in the VBox container, remember it's a whole bunch of buttons that we've created over here. Dot get children, so that's getting all the buttons. And then we're just going to queue free them. Okay, so that's basically for child in that VBox container, which is a bunch of buttons, and then we're getting that button and queue freeing each one by one. And then we're going to put our func selected next node. And in this function, we are actually calling this function, show dialog. And next node. So this is basically starting the process of showing the next dialog. Finally, we're going to call this function also when we start, when the player enters the sign, which is right here. And so we're going to just call show dialog here as well. And the first thing that we're calling is actually this one, start, because, you know, welcome and stuff. And so we'll just give it start. Show dialog start. And that should be it. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it shows the first message, welcome hero, what do you seek? And then it's showing my VBox container is up here. And so I have the two choices. So we probably want to change that. So let's just adjust things accordingly. And so I'm going to go to my label, go to 2D view, and let's just look at that. VBox container, we want that to be maybe center bottom, and label maybe center top. Let's see how that looks. Well, yeah, now it's way at the top and way at the bottom. So we could actually adjust these a bit more manually. So we put this down there, and we put our VBox container. Maybe, did I grab that properly? VBox container, move that up to there or so. And let's make that invisible. Let's see what happens. That's looking a little better. Obviously, you can change the font and stuff of the stuff in the VBox container as well. Oh, but you'll have to do that in the code, actually. So that could be another lesson, or you could just look up how do I change, you know, the font of my button from the code, because we're generating them from the code. I don't think you can change the font of the whole VBox container. Let's just take a look in the inspector. Theme overrides. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a way to do that. So it'll have to be done in the code. In terms of the spacing for the VBox container and label, that's looking pretty good, but depending on how much dialogue and how many choices you have, it may not always look good. So a better way of doing this is probably to go into the margins and stuff and the spacing of this stuff, and changing it there. But this works well enough for now, so it just depends how fancy you want to get. Anyway, so what happens when we press, say, burgers? It will show the next message, and there was no choices in the burger dialog, so there's nothing there. And if we go salad, dressing, there was nothing in the dressing, so there's nothing there. Right now we're just ending the dialog box by moving out, but of course you could have a button or something that would make the dialog box invisible again as well. What if we want to add more branching stuff? That's no problem. Because we've set up the structure already, all we need to do is change the dictionary a little bit to add more choices. So if we want to add something in salad dictionary, we could just add something in the choices here. Say we want so we have the same format, text, Caesar, next, Caesar, or maybe we could say Caesar dressing, whatever you want it to be called. And we have another choice here. Let's just copy this. And maybe this one has sesame dressing. Okay, so now that we have these next, we need to make more dictionary entries for these things, right? So then we go down here. This needs a comma. Next thing is going to be Caesar dressing. And this is going to be a dictionary that has text. And so some kind of sentence, great choice, Caesar is the best. And it also has a choices, which is now an empty list. And then we do the same thing for the sesame dressing. Need a comma in between dictionary entries. Sesame. Yep. And we can have a different message. Sesame is delicious. And choices again, nothing. So now if we go and choose salad, I now have choices under salad, right? And that will give me the appropriate message there. Okay, so that's looking good. So you can add as much as you want. If you want to get really complicated and have lots of branches and lots of things, it may not be the best idea to just have everything in the code here. You would have like a separate like text file that you're storing where you can have like, a long text file. We'll cover that maybe in another tutorial. But what if we want not just dialogues to happen, but if you want some kind of action to occur? You choose something and then all of a sudden your character gets much faster, or you change scenes. Let's actually do a new scene. Level 2. And let's give it a player. Okay. And just to make it clear, maybe we'll put a label there. Level 2. Something like that. Save that scene. And we'll go back to our script. And we want to add another choice. Say in the first dialogue, burger, salad, or scene 2. And next is scene 2. Now all we have to do is go to our selected. And so right now, every time that, we click something and click a choice, we're calling this function again, but I don't necessarily want to do that now. I might want to go to the next scene. So I'm going to say if next node equals scene 2, I'm going to go do a quick little change scene. And we'll get the scene 2. And then I'm going to say else do this thing. So basically, I have this kind of special case, and if I have next node as scene 2, which comes from right here, next, right, is scene 2. then we're going to do that scene change. Otherwise, we're just going to do the regular thing of showing the next dialogue. And let's see what happens. Okay, scene 2. I click on scene 2, and it goes to scene 2. So again, you could have any kind of code here, really. You don't have to change scene. You could, change something else, or make something happen, make the player do something, whatever it is. Okay, that was an extremely long tutorial, so that's all for this one. And we'll see you